Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'll just wait for everybody to come in.
Yeah.
Just let everybody in.
Yep.
I'm going to try and be. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Just let everyone in. Everybody admit all.
Hi.
Right. I'm going to try and be as useful as possible today. So I'm going to ask that when we come with our scenarios, that we just be as concise as possible so that I can respond and give you as much guidance as I can. So basically, just try and talk quite quickly. I'm expecting that some people's cases will overlap. So, if I hear somebody's situation, it might be similar to somebody else's, and I'll do the best I can. I don't promise to know everything. I sat on panel for 5 years, and I'm actually undergoing training again this summer. So, retraining. Um, Anybody who sits on admissions appeal panels are volunteer members, so we're meant to be independent of the schools. So the advice that I'm giving you is just based on my experience over the 5 years of different kinds of schools, of parents coming, the kind of things they bring, my local authority is Croydon. But because it's part of the PAN admissions agreement, it's generic training, it's general training. So it doesn't really matter where you are. Um, yeah, the training will be applicable. All right. It doesn't really matter if your school's an academy, if none of that matters. Okay. We're still having to work within the national framework. So I do this every year. I think the last video I did recorded with the 11 plus journey was about 3 years ago. So we're just going to get started. And what I will promise is that anybody who's in the session today, I'll try my best to follow up. Okay, I'll try my best. If you don't get to give me all, I'll try my best to follow up and give that advice. I do a paid service. So if we need to, so sometimes what happens with some people is they need me to assist all the way through leading up to the appeal. All right. And of course, I charge for that. But for today and a follow up from today, I'll definitely try and give as much advice as I can. Okay. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this. We're going to just try and start off with some scenarios. Okay. Right. So, who wants to go first, basically? All right. Who's got a pressing, or has anybody got a pressing? So they'll have different deadlines. All right. The deadlines in Croydon are around about May, mid-May. So that's when the deadline is, but that's not a national deadline. All right. So at the moment, there'll still be a lot of movement with the offers, with people who have just accepted the offers and rejected places. And there's a lot of movement going on with the waiting lists. And then the deadlines for submitting applications will be, I mean, appeals will be various. It will be varied. I know some people, sadly, they had to submit an appeal before today. All right. So I'm pretty much just going to take scenarios as they come up. So guys, please just let me know who wants to start. Will you just give me your scenario? You can leave out your child's name and be anonymous as you want, but give me the scenario of where you are. If you've I need to know things like if these are all grammar schools, I need to know if you've met the criteria. All right. So that's a big thing. If you've not passed, if you're not passed, um, that means we haven't met the criteria. You can still appeal, but you need to understand where you're what a strong appeal is and what's likely to be upheld. Okay. Now we do have a bit more. I can see your hand up, Usha. And forgive me if I pronounce names wrong. I'll try my best. We do have a bit more scope with secondary schools in terms of class numbers. All right. They're not as restricted as primary school numbers. So you do have a stronger ground for appeal on just arguing on the basis of it's not going to be detrimental to the other kids. Yes, it's not going to be detrimental. So you can push that argument because one of the school's big comebacks is that if we go over our prescribed admissions number, that will prejudice the other children who are there. Right, Usha, you've got your hands up. Let's hear from you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for organizing this one because I have so many questions. It's the first time it has happened to us. I'm in Kent, and my son has written a couple of other area exams as well. Unfortunately, the Kent one, he didn't pass by 1 mark. He has been offered a grammar school quite far away. So, and in school, he's been doing very well. And we don't know why exactly the head teacher appeal hasn't been forwarded. So when I approached the school, they were like, "Oh yeah, you should have the head teacher should have appeal has to go through first." And by the time I had notified them, it was a bit late. So they said they will support me. So now I just want to know how I can bring this forward, or because it's quite far away. He has achieved his place, quite satisfied with that. But main thing is he has achieved with his own effort, not much tutoring at all. So
lovely.
Yeah.
Well done. Right.
So his achievement in school is like maths and reasoning or other subject is good, above 90. English is average, 97% or something. Yeah.
Right. So basically with Kent and the Kent test, you're going to have to go through like the head teacher's appeal. They're going to support you. And it sounds, Usha, that your head teacher is willing to do that. So they will be able to evidence that this child, through their primary education, is a strong and academic student. So that, so that they've had a bit of a dip on if it's only missed that by 1 mark as well, they've had a bit of a dip of a performance. Of course, we know that it's quite unfortunate because Kent is quite big in terms of the number of grammar schools that they have there to make them eligible. And we know that missing out on 1 mark, there will be lots of children who have achieved much more than that to be able to get in. So sometimes just missing out on 1 mark, you've met the threshold, but actually the performance needed to be much more above that. But you are able to evidence that he is a very academic child over the years, so that they can see the profile of the student. So that's good. So what's your question, Usha?
What type of evidence? Because until now, I did get positive and negative support, like from feedback from other parents or something. So, and other in the group, I don't know the name of the parents, but they said they have achieved an appeal successful. A similar situation. They had 5 marks difference and other things as well. So now I thought, at least I have 2 weeks time. Let me try my best because he has worked hard. And what type of evidence is like how should I approach the school to say will they write the letter? They were not able to sure because they just gave me that online, in the Kent website, you have appeal process, the same document, which I have been following. So what type of evidences would put my son's appeal, like, yes, evidence
and I think that's a useful question, Usha, because one of the most popular questions that people are worried about is what kind of evidence can I have would be useful to support my appeal. So because the Kent test is a test that all the students take, and then some prepare for it more than others, you're in a very, very beneficial position with Kent, because the school gets involved. The school can get involved because they write a reference, basically. Whereas in other counties, they don't do that. So being in for the Kent test, that's useful. Now, I think the evidence that that's going to provide, if you're just basing your arguments on academic potential and the fact that the child has missed out, you are really trying to say they've just had an off day, but actually on any given day, they would have performed well. And so your basis of your appeal is to evidence that, to prove that. All right. And so all your evidence has to come from school. All your evidence has to come from anything that shows that he's had a consistent attainment all the way through his primary, so that it builds up a profile of a strongly academic child. So you're going to be looking for things like school reports, past reports, current reports. They usually ask for the current report, so the last report and the one before. All right. So you can get your hands on as many school reports as possible. You will have copies of these, Usha. You'll already have copies of these. So you're going to be asking for that. And then you're going to be asking for any references from any other, not private tutor. All right. Private tutors are not regarded as credible. All right. Because remember, we're just business people pretty much. Not all of us are teachers. So the private tutor is not somewhere that I would suggest, but it's not going to hurt you to bring it along, but it's not a piece of evidence that they're going to hold with any weight.
Okay.
All right. Because I had somebody ask me, so no, they go to, I don't know, whatever tuition company, KSOL, can I send that information there? Well, no, that's just a private company that the school don't hold in any regard as in terms of what the curriculum they're doing there. We don't know. All right. So your school and any other, if you've got any other professional that's worked with the child, all right.
So he hasn't been tutored. Only we took help in the end for mock tests and all. That's it. We haven't done, everything was home. Home tutored. I have tutored him, and same with my elder son as well. So we followed the same
brilliant.
process.
Yeah, so brilliant. You need to just evidence with school reports, really. All right.
Okay.
So that it should, because the school is a variable and credible place, and that's going to verify the profile of him. And then if he has anything like any other extracurricular activity, any kind of musical talents, regardless of if it's irrelevant to the school that he's going, what you're trying to do is build a picture of a child who is able.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And actually, just before the exam, before a couple of months, he has been very sick. So almost he lost 3 weeks in that sickness. So would that in July, actually?
He will you'll have a medical record from school. You'll have an attendance record from school. If he was sick and you had medical evidence, then that would be weighty.
Yeah, it was recorded.
So if you right. So if it's recorded and then you've got like a GP appointment or something that can verify that, and that has something that details that to back it up, then that's going to help your cause as well. Now, the fact that they've given you've already got a school offered. What choice was that? What was that on your list?
Okay. Because he didn't pass Kent, right? We were not. We can't put Kent first. That's what I was told. So I put
he didn't pass Kent, but what school has he been offered? You said
Medway.
Something about being far away.
Medway.
Oh, Medway. Right. So in Medway.
I was thinking, like, after listening to you, I was thinking, like, with this medical reason and other things, he's on few days before all these things happened, so it was out of our hands. So I think that because, and in that couple of weeks, he wrote other exams as well, which he passed. So I think it was very unfortunate for Kent, he didn't pass for that particular subject. So a closer school is what I'm appealing for.
Okay, so okay. So your grounds are on distance. Yeah. So you're
asking you.
Yeah.
Would that be?
So right, okay. So there's two parts to your appeal. The fact that he would have made this on another given day, all right? He underperformed, but actually he's a child that can perform at a grammar school level usually.
Yes.
And then the other thing is that when you go into appeal, and this remark is true for everyone, when you go into an appeal, you can't criticize the other school.
Correct.
All right. You've just got to you've just got to focus on the school that you've been offered.
Yes.
And you've got to say why that school in particular is the school that your child needs to attend.
Okay.
That's usually very hard. Yeah.
Yes. Can I say, sorry. The school I'm appealing to is what my elder son is already going. So it's very good. So we know with experience.
Yeah. So the problem is that they usually don't have a sibling admissions criteria. So you can mention it, but it doesn't bring weight to it because that would disadvantage a lot of people. So you can mention that obviously his older brother is going there, but because it's not part of the admissions criteria, they're not going to say, okay, then because your son.
As you said, you have to say positive of the school which we want. I want to say we have been quite satisfied and very good school.
Yeah. You can use that. You can use that.
What
that.
What questions will they ask? Actually, appeal that I haven't seen anywhere. Do you know any like?
When they come to appeal, when they come to appeal, it's actually your opportunity to say, and it's not them questioning you really. So what happens is when you go in, you will have submitted your appeal form with as much supplementary information as possible. All right. So all the evidence, medical reports, whatever it is. And then you will have laid out what you're saying. Well, look, the school that I've been offered is too far now. All right. The idea of too far is pretty much at secondary school level, all right, we think a reasonable distance, a reasonable distance. With secondary schools, there it'll be weak, all right, in terms of the distance. If he's not traveling for over an hour, okay, or if it is, they're going to say that's a reasonable distance. They don't always outline it, and it's definitely changed, but they might say to you, well, it's reasonable for him to travel there. And the fact that there is one closer to home, in this case, you haven't met the criteria, but there's one that he can reasonably travel to.
Okay, so distance is not
distance, you can mention it. So I'm not saying you can't go in and mention it, but what you might find is that they will judge that as reasonable. Right. Reasonable for a secondary school to be traveling to. But you can still argue against it. You can still try. What I would say for everybody going for appeal is that you don't know where your luck is going to fall with appeals. You know, you don't know how much movement there is going to be in a school. So therefore, it's always worth going. Usha, I'm just going to move on. And what I would encourage everybody to do as well is just to write some things in the chat, because I'll try to follow as much as I can. And it might find, I see a couple of people put things in chat. Okay, contact details. Is the head teacher letter needed? Yes. The head teacher's letter is needed for Kent in particular, not for all, but for Kent in particular, where everybody does the test, you need the head teacher's reference. All right, I'm going to come on to Ruchi. Got your hand up, Ruchi?
Hi there.
Hi.
Our case is for Stratford-upon-Avon Boys School.
Yes.
And our son scored 260. We fall in outer catchment area.
Yeah.
And our ground for the appeal is we are planning to tell them that we were having intention to relocate in the inner catchment before December, but because of some personal urgency back home in India, we had to travel there. And we traveled there in October, November. And when we returned, we could not make relevant arrangement to relocate before 31st December.
Yeah.
And now we are moving in inner catchment. So does this sound a good ground to you? You have any suggestions for us?
Okay, so I dealt with a case like this last year. So what's happened is at the point of admissions, at the point of offering, you haven't met the criteria. Yes, because you're out of catchment. And what's happening is this score, because I don't know all the regions off the top of my head, but is this score good enough for in catchment?
Yes.
I'm asking you that question.
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
The score that your son, is that good for in catchment, but not great?
His score is 260 and the inner catchment cutoff is 235.
And he got 260.
Yeah, 260.
Right. 260. And the out of catchment, what's that?
Outer catchment is 263.
Oh God, he's right on the line. Yeah. And he got 260. Yeah, so very marginal. I mean, okay. What they're going to say is that the school, because what you're trying to argue is that the admission code somehow hasn't been applied properly. All right. But you can't, because what they're going to say is, well, we haven't offered you a place because you didn't meet the criteria. And the criteria for out of catchment meant that you had to do that and you just missed it, even though it's marginal. Now, in terms of the moving and not moving, the fact that you're not in catchment, not in the address, again, you don't meet the criteria for us to offer you that. So they're going to say the school hasn't done anything wrong by not offering you that place, because there are people who are out of catchment and have achieved attained that cutoff, and there are people in catchment who have attained it. So you're outside of catchment and you haven't attained that. So the fact that your personal circumstances where you were going to move but you didn't, is by the by. All right. What the panel are going to do is listen to your circumstances and empathize with you. So they are going to empathize and say, okay, yes, we're very sorry to hear that you weren't able to move in, but they're not going to take responsibility for the school not applying an admissions code because you weren't able to do that. It's kind of like your hard luck. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. So sorry to interrupt there. My
yeah,
key question at this moment is the cutoff for the this appeal is 28th, and if before 28th we provide them the inner catchment address, will that impact the waiting list position for our son? Because you can imagine, if they still treat him in the inner catchment, he will most likely get through immediately because of
yeah,
his.
yeah, 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 yeah. So usually they'll have really clear guidance around when you have to be in the catchment area by, and that will be dependent on county and so on. All right. So we want to go back to that. But your answer is, well, what about if I move by the waiting list? So generally, no. Yeah, generally, no. However, it is always worth putting down that we're moving. This is our movement date. I've had a situation last year where they had two different addresses. Okay, and the appeal was held. They won a place in the school. So they had two different addresses, and then the local authority accused them of fraud. It was very, very messy. Okay, but in the end, they were able to prove that that register, by the time the waiting list came round, they were able to offer them a place. So what I'm saying to you is this, that if it is that you're going to move in during this period while you're on the waiting list, it's worth putting that in your appeal. All right, because it might be considered sympathetically, although the technicality is that you haven't met the criteria, and the criteria doesn't change when you're on the waiting list.
Okay, just one question on this one.
Yeah.
It's very clear in the admission process that if you move in or out of the catchment, inform the council. So
Yeah.
so now we are moving in and informing the council. Therefore, then is it not within their obligation to change the waiting position of our son, because he is no longer in outer catchment, he has moved in the inner catchment?
At the time the offers were being given, they applied the criteria as it stood.
Yes.
Yeah. So what you're going to appeal, you're appealing the decision that was made with the information as it was at that time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So right. Okay. So that bit, they haven't done anything. They haven't misapplied the admissions code. All right.
Yes.
So that was it. You didn't meet the criteria. Now that you're on the waiting list, however, they're not going to move you can tell the council you're now in the local authority, you're in the area, but it won't generally bump you up. All right. But what I'm saying to you is, I had a very sticky situation last year and it worked in their favor. All right. So you inform the council. All right. And you'll just have to wait to see how much movement there is on the waiting list and whether or not it might swing in your favor. All right. But what they are going to do is, the people who are on the waiting list are going to be people who, if it's out of catchment and they have met what you're competing, if it's out of catchment and they've met the criteria, those people will be on the waiting list too. All right.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is that you want them to retrospectively give you the inner catchment admissions code, because you're now on the waiting list, and that's more difficult to do, but it's worth a try.
Okay. Are you
sense?
optimistic? No, really help. But what is your gut feeling? Are you optimistic that this would be, or you? No, it's probably dicey.
With the what I can say to you as an appeal member, with the sometimes you can predict cases and sometimes you can't, because what I don't know is how much movement there's going to be on the waiting list. I never know that. because I don't know how many people are literally going to move, take up the offer that they didn't want. We don't know that. So that's why it's always worth lodging your appeal. I would say if I was just listening to that, then I would say, well, no, I'm not going to uphold the appeal, because the fact that you moved in after on the waiting list shouldn't make you supersede all of the other people who met the criteria at the time. Yeah. So that's what the panel are going to say. They're going to say, well, hold on. When we didn't offer you the place, that's because you didn't meet the criteria. You can't subsequently meet the criteria and then overturn the original decision. Yes? So that's the panel's reasoning. So when we go back and we discuss, that's what we'd be discussing. However, what we can't tell is if a couple of spaces are going to become available. And then you being on that waiting list, if we will look at that more favorably and say, okay, well, he's now in the catchment area, and we are now in the position to be a little bit more lenient. All right. So it's right. It's better that you're there with those, even if your grounds are a little bit tenuous. It's just good to be on the waiting list anyway. All right. And you send in your evidence that, right, we're in the local area now, and at least they will have that attached, because what it'll be like, you know, when you send in supplementary information, this will be additional information later on. They don't necessarily have to look at it. All right. So just add in that information, and then they may or may not look at it. And then you'll have your chance to speak at an appeal anyway. Okay, Ruchi? Okay, I'm going to move on. Zakia? Am I saying the name right? Zakia Bai? No, can't hear me? Okay. Sylvia? Sylvia?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. First of all, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
So my son, he didn't pass Kent test and grammar test. Unfortunately, at that time, before the test, we had like very difficult time. He's been diagnosed with ADHD. He was on medication. Like my dad wasn't well. So I was teaching him at home a lot, and he did really well. I was impressed. I was helping him and my oldest son as well. My oldest one, he's at grammar school as well. So we're trying to appeal on mainly the reason, because his brother is the same school. We live just like 5-minute walk. He's ADHD, pupil premium. That's what mainly the reason on the appeal form from the school.
Right. Okay.
So I know how we can use the reason to appeal.
So your reasons, Sylvia, sorry. So your reasons are that you had a bit of emotional stuff going on at home. All right.
Yes.
All right. So that's affected his performance. Yes, is what you're saying. A run up, and he hasn't passed the exams.
No.
Right. Okay. So it's a weak position.
Yeah, and the other thing, his brother is at school. We live next to the school, and he got the special education needs as well.
All right. So I'm going to make this point, Sylvia, sorry to cut you. I want to make this a point because it might affect anybody else. When you have special educational needs, I'll tell you the kind of appeals that are always upheld are any social welfare issues. They are always upheld. Special educational needs to an extent. The reason these kinds of issues are upheld is because they usually have a lot of evidence. Now, the way you have to win an appeal is the school has to be named. So whatever your child has, whatever they've been diagnosed with, the medical professional that is involved with your child has to name that school. So it isn't enough for a parent to say, well, that school is good because blah, 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 because it may well be that school may have a great learning support department and you might think it's fantastic. But the difficulty is the doctor, the whoever is involved with the child has to actually name, I don't know, Chartwell High School as the school that this child needs to go to. And a lot of the time, most of the time, they don't. However, if you have a child who's been involved in social services, they will. Okay. So if you have any medical needs, unless that school is particularly specifically named, it isn't evidence that there's a reason you have to go to that school. All right. So I'm just trying to say that for anybody else who has any other medical conditions, medical conditions, that's fine. That it has to be named by the professional. So if you can get them to name the school, great. Okay.
Okay.
The emotional needs, in terms of if there has been some emotional, you've been going through some trauma at home or something that has affected the child's capacity to be able to perform well, of course the panel will listen empathetically to this. So they'll listen and they'll feel empathy for the situation, but it isn't grounds for an appeal, because your grounds for appeal on two bases: that there's been a misadmissions of the application code, the code, all right, that somehow the school hasn't been transparent or they haven't applied the admission codes. There's been some kind of error. And now most people can't prove that that's the case. And so most parents who come to panel come on the basis of, well, this happened at home and that's why. What you have to do if you have only got an emotional basis for an appeal is you have to evidence that that child is of grammar or academic ability, and you have to evidence that by getting as much academic evidence as possible, with reports, with references and so on, to show the profile of that child. Okay, so for you, Sylvia, if he's performed well in the past, you have to show the panel that this is a child, so that when they look on paper, they can see that, okay, well, I can see that this child is really, really able, and yes, we can see that from the evidence that we have. You can still, Sylvia, I'm not saying don't, you can still share a little bit about what's happened and what affected his performance, but we've got to see a profile that this is a difference, that he is a strong performer, and there's a clear contrast to that point of time. The sibling, the distance to your house, because distance is not an admissions criteria for a grammar school, it's meaning that if it has a catchment or it doesn't have a catchment, then that's distance. But it's not like a comprehensive school that offers place because you live near to the school. All right, that's what I mean by that. So because that isn't an admissions criteria, it's not a strong ground for appeal. The fact that you live next door to it doesn't mean that you have a greater right to attend it, sadly. Does that help,
Okay.
Sylvia?
Yes, thank you a lot.
All right, okay. So
hello,
I've got,
can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, Zakia, yes.
Oh, hello, yeah, hi. I just wanted to ask, because we're trying to target schools in the Birmingham area. Because my son's got a hearing impairment, the adjustments were put in place, but they weren't met. So he couldn't hear the questions, and he missed out on a few marks. So I want to put under those grounds.
Well, did you alert the school at the time?
I did. After
when
he
did
came
the
out,
exam.
At the day I didn't, because obviously when we got home he told me then, so I did actually ring the school on the following Monday, because obviously the exam was took on the weekend, and they took a few days to get back to me, but they're saying that that's not the case. They're saying no, he heard everything. And I said, why would my child lie about this? He was really upset.
Okay. So tell me again. So he has a hearing impairment.
Yes.
And what special measures were put in place for him to be fair?
So basically, he was in a quiet room with other children with these the same abilities as him, and they usually have a audio tape playing, but they didn't have that. That actually the teacher was actually reading the questions out aloud that day.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he said he didn't hear some things.
Yes.
And what happened? Did he put his hand up when he didn't hear? Did
He
he
said
make
didn't,
anybody know he didn't hear?
I don't know about this. I don't know.
Okay.
He
Okay.
didn't. Yeah, I did tell him you should have told the teacher he couldn't hear, but he just left it because obviously being a child and not knowing the procedure,
Yeah.
he just left it.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It sounds like you would have some strong grounds to appeal, okay? Yeah. But what you're going to have to prove is, I mean, at the time when he would have had, all right, so he's got the arrangements in place. So the school have done that.
Yeah.
We've got the arrangements in place. Now, during the thing, they might have had an audio, but they didn't have the audio. Maybe the audio wasn't working, and they've decided, okay, rather than read it out, a recording, we'll just speak it.
Yeah.
In essence, there shouldn't be anything wrong with that. In essence, if it's a small room, there shouldn't be anything wrong with a teacher reading it as opposed to being a recording.
Yeah.
However, if there is something that the teacher has mispronounced or has affected the child's ability to hear, and the teacher doesn't know, that's the difficulty. Because what's going to happen is you're going to say, well, he's come out and said he didn't hear. And then they're going to say, well, how would we have known he didn't hear?
Yeah.
If nobody has made us aware. But what you have in your favor is that you've immediately highlighted it to the school.
Yes.
But the school you're saying is coming back to you and said, well, we weren't aware of anything and we think the exam went ahead.
That's right. Yeah.
Right, you've still got grounds for appeal, I would imagine. You've still got grounds because they will then have to be in a position to prove to you that there wasn't anything that they have to prove to you that he did hear. And they're not going to be able to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, what evidence would I need then to support that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't give you the evidence for what's in the room. Yeah. It's difficult. But the point is that they won't be able to prove to you that he could hear it clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't prove to them either.
Yeah.
You can't prove to them that he didn't hear because he didn't make anybody aware.
No, yeah.
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 And they can't prove to you that he did. All they can say is that, so you're both at stalemate with this.
Yeah.
Which is why you're not in a weaker position, they're not in a stronger one.
Okay.
Yeah, is all I'm saying. So I don't have documents to give you to say, well, get this, get that. But what you are going to have to do is, of course, because you've got access arrangements there, then I'm assuming you've already sent in all the medical detail.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. All right. The only thing that supports that is the fact that you're going to have to, of course, show the profile of the student to show that he's a bright little boy anyway.
Yeah.
All right. And then that will help to build a picture to say, well, clearly something happened, which is why he underperformed.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got to get all that evidence of school in terms of paperwork that proves that, I don't know, maybe he's done a maths challenge or maybe he's done all of those things through school, that he's got a certificate, anything that shows that he has been able to perform at greater depth and beyond, excel in the curriculum, those kind of things. And then if you get your medical professional involved, the medical professional has to state the school, sadly.
Yeah.
If they're not, and most of them are not prepared to do that because it's kind of, it's quite risky. Yeah. So most of them, but you never know, they'll have to state that that school is the one that he needs to go to. And then they have to explain why. They have to name the school.
So do you think we've got a good chance then? Do you think we've got a good chance?
I think you do have a grounds for appeal. I mean, if I would want to hear that, and I would be very concerned if I heard this. Yeah. So I would be, as an appeal member, I'd be very concerned about this. And I would say, well, how did the school make sure? Because I'm a teacher, when you're teaching and learning, part of teaching and learning is that we've got to assess the learning. We've got to check for learning, check for understanding. So we have to actually, there's a duty on us to just be able to check that. Did you hear what I said? Did you understand that? Now, of course, exam conditions are different.
Yeah.
It's not an interactive sort of thing. So they're not going to, but there is that duty to say, well, how do you know that he heard? How do you know that he wasn't so intimidated that he felt frightened to put up his hand? You know, he didn't say anything because it was a strange environment. He was nervous. But if you look at this portfolio of him, you can see that in a familiar environment, he performs outstandingly. So I do think you've got some grounds there.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yes, great.
Okay. I'm going to move on. Thea Garajan, please apologize if I'm saying your name awfully.
It's fine. You can call me Tyag. Thank you for
Thank you.
yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you for arranging this session.
That's
it's
okay.
really a help for the parents like us.
It's very stressful. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is regarding my daughter, and we live in Buckinghamshire County, and she is 2 marks lesser than the cutoff, which has been set by the Buckinghamshire Council. I'm trying to appeal a school which is in the catchment area. To give a background, we just moved from India 2 years back, and she got oriented to the new system in terms of the UK academy, and she was trying to cope up well and come up and appear for the grammar test. Unfortunately, the year 5, she started very late. Actually, year 4, she studied here, but again, there are some circumstances in the family, which, we were in our native land, and she resumed back year 5 only by month of October end. But even then, she has been consistent in her academic and trying to push herself hard and give a try for the grammar test. So I am trying to see, she's academically a good child because we see her performing well, but she just missed it by 2 points. So I'm just trying to see whether we can take this as to appeal and check for the possibility that she's getting into this option.
Okay, so so she sounds like she's a bright child. You know, she's got used to a new curriculum. Very good. Yes, I'll share the recording. So if you want to black yourself out, but I can actually do it where there's nobody on the screen. It's just me, guys. All right. I just thought it'd be useful. All right. So, okay. All right. So just to go over it, she's just 2 marks outside of it. So she's just 2 marks outside below. And she's in catchment or out of catchment?
In catchment.
Oh. So she's in catchment. And what's your appeal then?
I'm just going to orient the team towards her academic performance. She has been good and she has been consistent. Definitely there is an impact because she started the year very late because she has to catch up with her academic. On top of it, she keeps herself preparing for the exam as well. So the child has gone through a kind of pressure environment, but out of it she has performed. I think she has given her best. Maybe on that day, how the output comes, just marginally she left it by 2 points. But other than that, the child is academically oriented child and she has been performing all through. So that's the appeal from my side.
All right. So the difficulty is that she hasn't met the criteria for admissions.
Exactly.
Because that's the difficulty and it's marginal. But you have to remember that lots of children will have passed the exam and still not been offered a place. So here's your weakness, that there will be children who have met the threshold and they still don't get offered a place. So if you haven't met the threshold and you haven't got a place, you're in not a great position, but you're even worse if you've met the threshold and still not got offered a place. Because remember, these schools are oversubscribed. So that's the difficulty that you have. However, we never know how much movement there is in places. So you can't argue against the idea that the school hasn't applied the admissions code correctly, because they have. All right. They follow the procedures, etc., etc. All right. Now, all you'll be arguing about is that, well, it's kind of unreasonable that you haven't offered a place because she's 2 marks below. All right. So what you have to do to build that argument that it's a bit unreasonable is to really prove, and it sounds like you could very easily prove, that she's only new in year 4 or whatever year it was. And yet still she's been able to accelerate through the curriculum. All right. So you're going to get your evidence from school. All right, to show at entry point and then to show her performance in school. So tests, reports, anything else, any competitions, academic competitions that she's been participated in, anything that shows her academic capability and potential and achievements is going to build your profile to show that actually this is a child that with very new concepts, very new systems, has managed to actually hit the ground running. So again, it's the fact that it's not reasonable. That's what your argument is. That's the basis of your appeal, that, you know, it's unreasonable to not offer her a place in the light of the fact that she's clearly a grammar school pupil, and you'll have to evidence that by looking at getting as much evidence as you can that builds a profile of her being quite academic. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's
all I could make for her. I mean, I see her potential. I mean, in fact, her head teacher also has attested that she's a potential, student, and because she has been consistently performing. I've asked the head teacher to give me a recommendation letter, which she agreed that she will give it to me. So I'm trying to provide this as the evidence.
Yeah. So remember, the problem they've got is oversubscription.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's the problem that they have. They've got oversubscription. And so what you'll have is this idea of, yeah, if you've got an oversubscription, that they're going to have to try to see, well,
What do you want me to take?
sorry, yeah, the oversubscription, and just trying to see, well, why would they admit somebody who hasn't quite met the criteria when there are other people who have? Does that make sense? So all you can do is just build in the fact that actually she would have passed. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's weak. It's weak grounds, but you can try.
Okay, but the beginning of the year she started late. As I said, she did not resume in the month of August. The school reopened because of some family circumstances. She was able to resume year 5 only in the end of October. Will that stand as a good debate in the appeal?
All in, because definitely put it all in, because you're just sharing the difficulties that you've had at home, which have impacted her ability to perform outstandingly. So put it all in, yes. But you are competing against those who have who have passed but haven't been offered a place. All right. It's worth a try. It's worth a try. Put in all the details about, the family circumstances, etc., and then just take your chances with that. So just get your evidence in terms of her performance, school reports, like I said, anything else that any certificates she's achieved, put them all in there. Then explain the circumstances, the family circumstances that you've had to sadly undergo, and how this has impacted her ability to perform at a particular level. Okay.
Okay.
All right then. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I've got, I can't show to raise hand, but I've got questions. Maya?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Have you finished with the gentleman?
Sorry, I can hear you. Hi, Maya.
Hi. My question is, my daughter, she got always good performance, but we didn't get any school from my list. We got completely different school, which I don't even consider, because it's a school with very bad reputation. It's only 7% carry on study from there, and she's a really good high-end student.
Right.
She passed the grammar. She passed the Kent test.
Right.
But obviously, we are very far from the catchment area.
Right.
So I would like to appeal for a school which is close to us.
Yes.
But it's my first time, because obviously my grounds are, I don't like the other school. The other school doesn't have good reputation. Is bad performance. Is popular with drugs and rudeness and bullying. But as far as I understood what you say by now, that's not something to criticize the other school.
No.
So if you can advise what grounds I can place to be stable.
Okay. So even if you went and you said, yeah, that school is rubbish over there, it's irrelevant, because all you are doing is arguing against why you haven't been given a place at this school. So your appeal has got to be focused on this school and why I need this school for my child.
Yes.
Okay. The other school is irrelevant now.
Yes.
Okay. If you haven't received any of the 6 options you put in, that rings alarm bells to me because it might mean, I don't know, Maya, but I've seen many parents do this where they list schools that they don't necessarily meet the criteria of. All right. So for instance, if you list 6 grammar schools and it was all based on passing a test that you didn't pass, then you end up with no schools. It's why we always kind of recommend put a couple of backup schools, a couple of comprehensive, because what happens is the local authority have a duty to give you a school place. They have a duty to give you a school place, which is why they've given you a school with probably a space in it. And let's face it, the schools with places in it are usually the schools nobody wants to go to. All right. So
Exactly.
they've given you a school because if they didn't kind of give you a school, they would not have fulfilled their obligation, their duty.
Yeah,
So
but
that's why.
I didn't point it to just grammar schools. I pointed only one grammar school and the rest was just public schools.
But what was the criteria? Was some of them catchment area? Was any of them faith? It depends on the admission codes of those places. Nothing.
There is no explanation why it haven't been offered none of those schools. The only thing on email says we're giving you the closest school available. That's
Right.
it. I don't know why the others hasn't, because basically all of them, they're very close. They are close basically. This one, even they give me, is a little bit further than the other ones I got on my list.
Okay, so the first thing is, Maya, make sure you're on the waiting list for all those other schools because there will be lots of spaces.
I am.
I mean, lots of movement. Right. So as long as you're on the waiting list, you're just going to argue that I didn't choose this. They're doing their duty by offering you one. And then you're going to have to pick a school that you want, really. Yeah. And just say, and focus on that school and say, well, look, I want a school that is my child's potential will be achieved. My child's potential will be achieved. You can look at things like Ofsted reports. You can say, well, okay, the academic, this is evidence that the academic, what the school attainment of the school matches. My daughter would thrive there. Okay. They are going to listen because you haven't had a school that you've now. I don't know why you've not got any of the school choices.
Me either. I don't know either.
But my gut feeling, Maya, is that there was something about the criteria of these schools, because I've seen it so many times, that you didn't meet. Yeah. It could be that, or it could be that you live in such a densely populated area. This happens, that actually what happens is you are literally just squeezed out of your local school. So there are so many, like a new block of flats go up and suddenly, they were taking children in this radius and then by next week they're not, or when there's blocks. So it could be that, I don't know what the reasons were without seeing.
That is the most wanted and popular schools in the area, basically.
Right. All of them.
So, yes. So
what area are you living in? What area are you in?
Bexley Borough.
Bexley. Okay. All right. Okay.
The only one school we is unwanted from nobody is Bexley Heath Academy, and we've got this one. But apparently I cannot go there and just spill out the bad things for this school because no one will pay attention on me. From my research and from that what you said.
You've just got to focus on the school that you want and why it is best for your child. Okay.
Yeah.
So go to things like, as somebody Nimi saying, we're in this densely populated sort of Gotford outside our list. I'm just saying, I'm not saying you did this, but I've seen over the years that when people are filling in those preference, sometimes there is not a realistic school on the list that you can get into. I've seen it so many times. So parents will put down, oh, I like these 5 schools, but actually they might not realistically meet the criteria, the admissions criteria of those schools. So I don't know that this is the case, but sometimes that's what happens. And then you end up not getting a school at all that you wanted. And then the local authority just give you one that is, you know, got a space in it which nobody wants. So yes, and I've seen population increases where they put up new flats and then that changes the catchment criteria. So I don't know, but in terms of your appeal, Maya, you've got to say, well, this isn't my choice, this isn't my preference, and you've just got to, this isn't my preference, this isn't my choice. Okay, my choice is X, Y, and Z school. Now they might say to you, well, you didn't meet any of the criteria. I don't know. Yeah, but if I got a panel like that, we'd be able to see the schools you've chosen, and we'll be able to see that, well, you didn't meet the criteria or not. I don't know. Yeah. But your argument is that this wasn't the school that I chose, my 6th preference. That's my right to have 6 choices. And this that you've given me isn't my choice. All right. So I want to go to a school because it's easier to get to, the welfare of the child is easier to get to. My child is academically capable. My child is academically capable. And you've got to just evidence that. Okay, I would say, Maya, that you do have some strong grounds for appeal. You still there?
Yeah, I'm listening.
You do have some strong grounds for appeal. Yeah. Oops, hello. Right, you do have some strong grounds for appeal, Maya, so I would feel reassured. And I have seen many times, sorry, Naga Jai, can you put yourself on mute?
Gaming chair.
Hello. Sorry, Maya. I don't know. I don't think she realizes her microphone is on. Right. Okay. So, right. Yeah. So you do have strong grounds. You do have strong grounds, Maya. And I would just focus my appeal on why I want to go to the school. Make sure, Maya, what I would do is go back to the schools that you applied to on the list and go back to their admissions criteria. Maya, I'm going to invite you to speak to me after because I want to see the schools that you applied to and what happened.
Okay.
Yeah? Yeah? I want to see the schools that you applied to. I want you to look at the admissions code of those 6 schools.
How
We
can
want
I
to
find
make
the
sure
admission code?
on the school's websites. Yeah? So they will have admissions. Just go to the school's website. They'll have admissions process, what you do. And then they will have an admissions policy. All right. In the policy, it will detail how they offer places. So if they have a sibling policy, if they have a distance policy, whatever it may be, right? And then we'll see if if they have not applied the admissions code properly, because I don't know.
Yeah, me too. They didn't give any reason, really.
Yeah. So yeah, they won't give you reasons at this point. What will happen is when your application comes around, it's just all computerized. So they just look and they go, oh yeah, Maya, okay, no, she hasn't met the criteria for that. Move on to the next one. Okay, she hasn't met the criteria. Move on. That's all they do. It's not even a human, you know. So it's just like, okay, admissions is X, Y, and Z. Okay, she doesn't meet X, Y, Z, or she doesn't meet X, Y. She only meets Z. Move on. So I need to see what the admission criteria is for those 6 schools to see whether or not there's been any misapplication of those rules, to see why.
I've had 4 schools on the list because there is no other schools you can choose around the area, basically.
Okay, so you had 6 options and you chose 4.
Yes.
Okay, so here's my advice. It's too late for you now. Whenever you have 6 spaces, you got to fill them. If you don't fill them, the local authority fills it for you. I mean, it's too late for you now, but that's what the advice I always, when you're filling in that preference, I have had parents go, well, I just put one school because that's where we want to go. If you don't meet the criteria, the local authority will fill the gaps for you. So that's what's happened here. But anyway, Just give me those schools. You go to the admissions policy of those schools and look at it and see whether or not you've met the admissions criteria. And then we can at least say, well, hold on, I should have got Christchurch because actually I met the criteria. You haven't applied the admissions code properly. Yeah. So you've got some place to stand. And then at least that way, yeah. So focus on the school that you want and then look at the admissions policy and see, well, we'll see why we didn't get that. Okay.
I'll have a look now. So basically, from the 4 schools I had, one was the grammar school, but we're out of the catchment area quite far.
Okay.
And then the 4th school I had is very popular, and on the waiting list we are 192. I'm not going either there. The other
Yeah.
2 schools, which I'm gonna appeal, is they're very close. I know that their policy is siblings, special needs. Because I spoke to schools already, special needs,
All
disability.
schools is special needs. All schools have the social welfare number top at number. If you're in social welfare, all schools have that. That will be number 1.
Disabilities, any health letters, which I don't have because she's totally healthy.
No.
Don't have anything.
Just send me that information. I'll look at it. Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll have my details. Do it. I don't know if I even have. I'll type my details in it to everyone. Okay. But it should be on the email.
But
I'll type my
basically,
email.
I've got your messenger.
Yeah. So I'm on there. Okay. But I'll do it here. All right. Look, just send me that and yeah. Hopefully that's helpful. All right. I'm gonna move on now, Maya. Baha.
Okay, thank you. I'll text you the
You're
details
welcome.
later.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, no problem. Thank you
Yes,
very much.
Baha. You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Baha. Hello, Baha? No? Not hearing? Okay, let me go to the messages then while I'm waiting. My eldest
Maya,
son will be... Oh,
so-
Vinod, sorry, yes.
okay, sorry. Yeah, it's regarding King Edward Grammar School in Essex. Yeah, so they have
Yeah.
the catchment criteria, you have to be in a catchment before 31st of October. So I will explain you my case. So we got the house sorted before 31st of October. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
at that time we were not in UK. We're in Channel Island. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I applied for in-year admission for year 6 for my son here on 4th of November. But since we didn't hear anything from local council for the in-year application, and we don't wanted him to keep away from the school for a long time, so we stayed back in Jersey for till 22nd of November, and then we came over here, and then we got a school allotted here. But
Right.
at the time of, I think, allocation, what King Edward Grammar School did, they checked with the Jersey authority for the last day of my son there, and they found 20th November was the last day, and they said
Right.
since you were not here from 1st of November till 22nd, yeah, though we got our house sorted here, said they cannot consider us as an in-catchment applicant.
Right. So, right, okay. So you haven't met the deadline dates for in-catchment.
Yeah, I mean, we got a house sorted here, council tax, everything, because we got tenancy agreement, we got council tax, we got,
Yes.
Electricity, everything sorted on our name before 31st of October.
But you weren't registered there yet? But
Yes,
if you got council tax, you are registered.
correct. Yeah.
Right. But they're saying that they didn't get it in time?
No, they got it actually, but they said since I was in Jersey for 20 days more, because they check with Jersey authority for the school last day.
Oh, I see. So it
Yeah.
sounds like you were kind of registered between 2 places. So if
Yeah.
they checked that, right. Okay. What's happening here is they're kind of approaching it as if you're committing fraud. I don't mean to frighten you,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
what they're doing is they're thinking, he's actually in Jersey and he's using this address. That's
Yeah.
what they're thinking. All
Mhm.
right. But for you, it's genuine. You're
Yeah.
trying to make the move, but
Correct.
maybe you have work there still, and you can't tie it all up. But that's their approach. Now, I would say you've got grounds for appeal still, okay? In particular, because you got the house sorted out. All right. So I know that you've sent that documentation, and they've still kind of said, well, actually, you have still been in Jersey. But I dealt with a similar case like this last year. And I would say that you have grounds for appeal there, because you've actually gone as far as to get the house. And as long as you can prove that actually this is your current residence now, you don't have another residence over in Jersey, at least you can show that it was authentic.
Yeah. I can show that
Yeah?
because I can have like
Yes.
last tenancy date and all actually.
Yeah. So I would say that you do have some grounds to appeal. Okay, you do have some grounds to appeal, and you're just going to have to argue the point based on the evidence that actually, this is your permanent residence. You are here. You went as far as to get the house, the council tax sorted, all of that sort of stuff, and you're not in two places. You were just making that move, and that's it. That's the only thing you can argue, because all they're going to say is that actually exactly what they've said so far, that actually you weren't in catchment, so we haven't misapplied our admissions criteria, you just didn't meet them. Okay. And you're going to argue that actually, if you take a reasonable approach to this, if you take a reasonable approach to it, you will see that actually I am in this locality, and this is where I currently reside, and here is the proof of that. All right. And you'll just have to be quite dogged with that. So just send in your, the council tax, your utility bills, etc., and registration on the voting register.
Yeah,
Okay.
that I won't have actually. I mean, like a voting register, I've not done it, but electricity council.
Not even the utility, So certainly, just being, if you're on the council tax, then you're on the registration, you're on the register, the council register, and that's usually the strongest piece of evidence.
Okay.
All right, because that points to your place of residence. That points to your main place of residence. So so I mean, they're fine-tuning it over, okay, not that date, the date, but they're saying, well, you were in Jersey, and you've just got to keep on your argument that, well, actually, this is my main residence, and I was here at this time, and this is a genuine application. And then just go with that. It's worth trying it. It's worth, because like I said last year, I had somebody who had his wife lived one place, he lived another, and the appeal managed to get upheld. Okay.
And also reason for like that, like we got a result on 15th of October, and we just got like literally a week to, because the score he got, we thought he might get in catchment admission. So we literally got only 2 weeks to sort the tenancy agreement and all. And before this tenancy get finalized, we cannot give notice period to that
I understand.
So we needed that period actually. So we got a tenancy agreement sorted, I think 26th or 27th of October. And then we give the notice period to the Jersey landlord, and also applied for his
I would argue that, Vinod. I mean, I would just argue that. I would just argue that, well, we did that, but we still had to give him notice, but actually it's giving him notice. The notice is that we're leaving. So that doesn't, I'm not there. We're leaving, but I've made provision to where we're going to be. I would just argue with that. You do have some grounds to argue. So I would just argue and just persist, and then hope that there's movement on the waiting list.
Okay, no worries. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
All right.
Helpful.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I've got 2 hands up.
Hello, it's Sheena. Sorry, that's Bahar here. Sorry, I had
hi,
some
Bahar.
technical issues earlier.
Okay. Welcome back.
Thank you. My question is, my son passed Medway test, but unfortunately he did not pass the Kent test because of the, we can say, the emotional needs, because my mum passed away just the week before the, just before the exam, and I wasn't here whole summer and during the test period as well. So this poor boy had to take it all by himself. So as soon as I came back for the Medway test, he passed. You could tell the difference between Kent
Right,
and the
yeah,
Medway.
yeah.
My question is, can you still appeal any grammar school, even if you haven't put that school into your original list at the first place?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, because what are your grounds of appeal? Like, I didn't apply for it. I mean, look, I've sat on panel and they've talked to me about schools that weren't on their preference. I have done
Okay.
that. So
Okay.
so when I say to you no, I mean it's a little bit illogical, but it's been done many times, all right? Because sometimes people appeal for school places that they'd never applied for. All right.
Mhm.
And they said, oh, well, you know, this was going on at the time, and then and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, you can go back retrospectively, but you can see that you're in a weaker position, right? Because there are lots of people who initially, who are still on that waiting list, who it was their first choice and they didn't get it. All
Yeah.
right. So
Okay.
you're coming beneath all those, behind all of those people.
I
So that's
see.
not to say you can't, because you just don't know. But you are going to have people who have applied for those schools who have missed out. And
Okay.
they're actually on the list, the waiting list.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. But in terms of what your son had to go through quite emotionally, I mean, those are grounds to be listened to, especially if you can evidence that there was an obvious, like you say, an obvious dip in performance. And what you're going to be arguing is that it's not reasonable for you to have made this decision. All right.
Okay.
So you're going to have to just evidence, sadly, you don't have to prove any evidence of what you're saying is true. But you have to show that there's a dip in his performance because you weren't there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, build a profile of what his usual performance is like. All right. So build a profile of what his usual performance is like. And then show the distinction between, okay, you being away and then you coming back, and how the toll that it's had on this family is purely emotional. And the reason that the emotional arguments are a little bit weaker is because you can't argue that the school hasn't done what they're meant to do. They've applied the admissions code.
I see.
You know, they haven't made a mistake,
Yeah.
which, you know, they've just done their job. And so you can't argue that. You have to purely just bake up an emotion appeal that, well, he would have passed, and so you're on the back foot. You know,
Okay.
he would have
Okay.
passed had X, Y, and Z and all these things been as they should have been. But that's not to say, Bahar, that you can't still say it. And I would always say, try it. You never know, because you just never know how the cards are going to lie when you go. You just never know about the changes that the school is going through. You just never know. So as
Okay.
long as you can have a profile that he is, as long as you can have a profile that shows, okay, that shows that he's a strong candidate, then that's as much as you can do. But it's not a strong position, but it's worth giving it a go.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry you sound so deflated with that. I'm sorry, but
yeah,
have a go at it. Have a go. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's another thing that he got offered a place, but it's not
Yeah.
the school that he liked it to go, and
Yeah.
also we want him to go. But we are
Right.
glad that he at least got a place being offered.
Yes.
Since now we never had any catchment area issues where we
Right.
live.
Yeah.
And the child who lives 5 houses down my road got accepted and offered the place, the school he wanted to go, but not my son, because we are slightly outside that catchment area. How the council is basically only by 200 meters. We lost
Yeah. I see this all the time. I see this, sadly, where, you know, people are offered on a street this year and then next year they're not.
Yeah.
And obviously the way the school applies the admission codes, they can't be responsible for that, because you know it's building, what new building goes up, you know. So it's not that they haven't applied their admissions code properly. It
Okay.
just, An area can get populated, it can't. You can always go onto a school website and look at, how far the last offer was, but it changes every year.
Yes.
And very often it can shrink.
Mhm.
And they'll tell you that very often where they last offered to can shrink. Then the following year, it could be a lower birth rate year, and then it expands.
Absolutely.
So there's lots of things outside of the school's control that means you get an oversubscription in one year, and then for the following year, more appeals are upheld because actually there's more movement, there's less students.
Yeah.
So it just, so there are some things that, it's just in society, but it's worth trying for appeal, but your appeal is just going to be, it's unreasonable. And hope that it's unreasonable that you wouldn't do that, because you can't argue that they've done anything wrong.
We put him on the waiting list for that school, but the waiting list criteria is applied based on distance again, or it's about the numbers of the applicants on the list?
So it's going to, your waiting list criteria is just based on the regular admissions criteria. You still got to meet the admissions criteria. So if the admissions criteria of the school, because every school is a little bit different, some schools will have a catchment area of grammar school, some won't. So it's not, I can't give like general advice. It just depends on what that school's admissions criteria is. And anybody who's on the waiting list still has to meet the criteria. You couldn't suddenly not meet the criteria and just join, let's just say one of the criteria was passing the exam and you didn't pass the exam, but then you joined the waiting list.
I see.
Can you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So therefore, if you don't meet one part of the criteria, you have to meet the criteria still.
Okay, I see.
So it depends on what the admissions criteria is. So go back and you look at the admissions policy, and the admission policy will give you the criteria, will say to you what it is. If it's like, sometimes they ring fence an area and say, well, we'll take certain amount of children from this area, and so on. So you have to go back and see what that criteria is and just stay on the waiting list. As long as you meet the criteria, you're in with a chance.
Okay. Sorry, the last one, Sheena, I won't take much time of it. That waiting list is controlled by school or the council?
The school manage it the council manage it initially, and then the schools don't know who's on it and where they are. And then after a period of time, it kind of goes to the school, and then you have to ring up the school and find out where you are. And then after a period of time after that, then the waiting list can they can get rid of it, and then you have to ask them, I want to stay on the waiting list.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sheena.
You're welcome. Right, let me just go into, I don't think anybody else has got their hands up. We've had quite a long time now, but let me just go to the questions. All right, so I've put my email address. Densely put, can we apply review for school which we did not list in the offer? I think I explained that. My eldest son preparing for 11 plus bucks this September. We are definitely out of the catchment. We'll not be able to move into catchment when the son's been. Okay, my younger son has special needs. Yeah, if you're, I said, there's the Srinivas, if you're still here, if you were definitely out of the catchment, so if you haven't met the criteria, you don't have any grounds for appeal. This September we are definitely will be. Oh, so you're not appealing.
Yeah, basically, I'm asking for advice what I will be doing the next year, because I'm waiting for this year. So I'm just trying to prepare my.
Okay, so if you're out of catchment, you need to pass that test well.
Yeah.
All right.
Hopefully, it will be done.
Yes.
And if that happens, then what will be my grounds?
Well, if you don't pass the test, you don't have grounds for appeal because you wouldn't have met the criteria.
Yeah, let's assume that my son passes through and 121 and above. Then what happens?
If you're out of catchment, then there isn't. So if you're out of catchment, there isn't the obligation for you to have to be in catchment. It's out of catchment. Yeah. So once you pass the test, so they've got the two inner zone and then the outer zone, right? So the outer zone, You don't have to, you can stay where you are.
Okay. But
Yeah?
yeah,
So it's
the
fine.
last, I mean, as per the recent allocation list,
Yeah.
the last person who got the place is nearly 2 miles away.
Right.
They're actually still quite far from the
Yeah.
country.
That is quite far. The only thing I would say is that whatever it is this year, it can be very different from last year. So it just depends on, like I've said before, sometimes you can have buildings up. Basically, the catchment area or how far they offer can shrink. And that just depends on population growth in a particular area. You know, they might have put up a new housing block in a new area. And so you have more people coming from a smaller space. So very often we can't rely on that. We can look at last year and think, oh, that's great. Hopefully it stays the same this year. But that's all we can do. We just have to hope. All right. It's an indication, but it doesn't mean it's going to be the same. Does that help? Yeah. So we can't predict that. But if you're out of catchment, you don't have to move into catchment. You've just got the out of catchments, and then you can stay, you can live where you want. Yeah. All right.
Got it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I think Nimi said in outer catchment for preferred school, but I feel they will offer someone even further away with a higher score. Feels a little unfair as we want a localish school. Okay. So you're in the outer catchment for preferred school. Do you mean you're in the catchment? I don't know what you mean, Nimi, but I feel they'll offer someone even for. So you were in the catchment for your preferred school, Nimi? But you thinking they will offer somebody with a highest. Oh, okay. Nimi, can you clear this up for me? Secondary catchment. So you're in the catchment, are you? Yes or no? You're out of the catchment. All right. So are you saying that you're out? Okay. So you're in, I'm not sure what you're asking me. All right. So you're near to the school, but you think that somebody who lives further away might get an offer because they might have a higher score than you. Is that what you're saying? Yes? Right. Okay. So here's the thing, right? This is the argument against grammar schools. All right. This is the argument. This is a political thing. So most local people want the schools for the local children. All right. And this is the argument against, because what you'll have is for those children and those schools that don't have a very or don't have a big catchment area, then kids from all over the country or far away can come in. And then the people in that local area are effectively disadvantaged. That's the argument against grammar schools and selective schools. But that's like a wider argument for us. But yes, it's unfair, but that's the system at the moment. Yeah, so we can't predict if it'll yeah.
I probably didn't explain myself well enough. So
sorry.
In terms of catchment for this particular school, there's two catchment areas. There's like an inner catchment area, which is for people that live in WD3. And then there's like another catchment area which is slightly outside WD3, which we're in.
Okay.
But everyone who went for this particular school did the assessment, and I know that people who are living further away to the school than me, but with a higher score, are higher up on the waiting list. So they are beyond the secondary catchment area, but their score is higher. So I feel like the school is choosing based on attainment rather than locality.
Okay, so this is the thing, Nimi. What is their policy? Because if their policy is just on rank of test, then they can do that. But if their policy is, well, ranking of tests based on catchment, then they cannot do that. And you would have strong grounds for appealing a place.
The way I read the policy, it's the secondary description that you've given me. but I did speak to admissions when the scores
Right.
came out, and they themselves told me that based on your score, we're going to have someone further away. But I just didn't understand that because I felt that
Well,
that's not
I
what
mean,
the policy read.
well, okay, so this is it. I have to be very clear about the policy. I would have to be very clear about the policy because the policy is their legal constraint. And you would have that's it. That's why the policy is there. And if they're not admitting based on their policy, then you've got a legal challenge. They cannot do that.
I think it's worth
It is
revisiting the policy.
absolutely, but you've got to be really clear. You've got to be really clear what their policy is. But I would say absolutely, if their admissions policy is by rank order of performance on the test, it says that clearly in a lot of the grammar schools. Yeah. And then they will usually outline how they're going to admit. So they might say, we've got a ring-fenced area of people who only need to get 50% that we admit in ring A. And then the next admitting thing is ring B, and they only need to get that. And then they'll lay it out in whatever their policy is. And they have to abide by that. So if she's saying to you that her policy is not purely by rank, it's by rank, but actually zone A gets priority, they have to prioritize zone A.
Yeah.
Now it might
I'll revisit.
Yeah, I think you need to revisit that and be very clear. Sometimes what they do, like in one of the schools near me, they actually ring fence a number. So they might say, okay, well, the first 30 students are from this postcode. And then once they've filled that, then of course it's just rank order from wherever. So I don't know if they've detailed that, which is why she's saying to you that, well, we've filled our quota in ring A. And so now we are permitted to just fill it from rank order after that. I don't know if that's the case, Nimi.
Okay, I'll revisit.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Revisit it, because if they are not applying their policy, the appeal has to be upheld, and there's strong grounds and they're clear grounds, all right, because that would be maladministration of admissions criteria. They haven't administered that properly.
Thank you.
All right, so check your grounds and then come back to me with that, Nimi. I'll offer that to you. Come back to me with that and let me have a look.
Thanks. Okay,
Yeah?
thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Right, I think that's it. Baha, my contact details, I'll email here. I did it before. It's Sheena Chan at South Croydon Tutors.co.uk, or just message me. And I'll put my number here, 07913 749 148. Okay, so my details are there. I hope that's been helpful. I think there was only one other question. What's the best time to follow up on a waiting list, and how often? Please don't want to annoy admissions. Well, the only thing I'd say, Nim, is they're kind of used to everybody annoying them. But there is movement here. Like in my borough in Croydon, when we start doing appeals, we do them in like July. Most of them are in June, July, before the school term finishes. And there's a big so people have just handed in and released about a week ago, last week. So I would say around deadline for appeals is around May-ish time. All right. So I would say after about April, May, they're going to know. All right. April, May, get in touch with them. They'll know, where you are roughly. Okay. And don't be put off by being too far down the list. Lots of people you can jump. Okay, so I'd get in touch with them after Easter, around May time, and they'll probably be able to give you a bit more information. Okay, guys, right, I'm all talked out. I hope that's been super helpful. I'll save the recording and I'll send it to the people on the email list if they want that. And hopefully it's been helpful. If you think of anything that I can answer really quickly, I'll try my best to follow it up by email. All right. Good night, everyone. Have a great night. And I've been happy to serve. Bye-bye. Thank you now.